Welcome to the MyTopo webinar for using topographic maps and aerial photos as well for hunting. And we'll just go ahead and get started with looking at our website and spend just a little bit of time there to make sure that you're familiar with the type of maps that we offer and how to get those. So this is our website, mytopo.com, and click on the red button, Find a Map. That will take you to the search page, and this shows you just an introduction on how to use the search page. And once it comes up, you'll want to scroll down to where it shows hunting or GMU maps and click on that. And this shows you some options. So we're going to first look at the Western Hunt Area GMU maps. So you'll select the state that you want first, and depending on the state it may have different options for different animal species that you're going to hunt. And so you look up whatever that might be. So we can go to, let's say, deer and elk, and select the unit number that you want, and then once the information is up here, that will show you an image of the map, and you can click on that and click down in the lower right corner here to enlarge that and take a look at the preview of your map. But these maps are really just intended for scouting and finding the location that you might want to go to. We do not recommend these maps as your sole source of navigation when you're out there. And the reason is that they're just not detailed enough as far as the contour lines, roads, streams, and so on. In fact, the custom maps that you can build, which are based on the USGS prints, those are 1 to 24,000. So it's roughly 4 times more detailed than this map. All right, you might also notice that in some areas, let me see if I can find one here. Some of the units are even too large for a BLM print, so you might have an east and a west map. So if you want the full unit, you would have to purchase both of those. All right, so again, these maps are great. If you draw a certain unit and you want a map of it, we would recommend ordering a print of that. But once you get that print and once you get a better idea of where you want to go, you'll probably want to get a more detailed print. And I'll show you how to do that. Back from our home page, click to search, and you'll type in the location right here in the search box. So let's go to Red Pryor Mountain in Montana. Once you type it and the search comes up, you'll click on it. And we'll go to Make a Custom Map. And we'll start with topographic map. You can change your map type once you're here. So this shows you the map building page. And one of the things I want you to notice is we have different base map options. So this is a topo map. You can switch to a standard aerial. And then you can switch to a hybrid map, which combines the topo map and the aerial photo. And you might be asking, which of these maps is going to work best for me? Well, let me compare them just so you can see. First of all, let's start with this GMU big game unit map. This is in the same location in Montana. And if we zoom in on this area, let's look at the Bear Canyon area right here. So you can see it shows contour lines, it shows roads and trails in reasonable levels of detail. But if we switch to the detailed topo map of the same area, you can see it's so much more detailed. You can see all the contour lines, you can see the streams in great detail, it shows roads and trails. So that's why it's really, if you're going to be navigating at all and out hunting, you really need to have one of the detailed topo maps. So the topo map is just going to show you contour lines, roads, trails, and so on. If you wanted to switch over to an aerial photo, the aerial photo is a picture taken from an airplane, and it does not have any topographic features, but it does show you the actual what's on the ground just based on the picture. So you can see a whole lot more detail as far as what the ground is like there, what the trees are like, how many trees are there. So the aerial photo is just a great option for scouting out different locations and figuring out what's actually on the ground. Now the hybrid view, that combines the topo map and the aerial. And in a lot of cases, this works really well In some cases, it doesn't work as well. You just see, let's say this area, there's so many contour lines that it's hard to see the ground underneath. So we recommend just going onto our website, finding your location, and viewing a preview of the hybrid map. And let me just switch back and show you that. So once you have the location that you want, you can choose your map zoom here. And for aerial photos and hybrid maps, you can really zoom and get in close here. So we recommend that. And once you have the area selected, just click on the Preview Now button, and that will take a few minutes, but it will show you, well, it'll take half a minute or so, but it will show you what the map actually looks like. So just make sure with any of our maps, before you order them, preview them so you know what you're getting.
Hey, Doug, let me jump in here. We've got a question about the date of the photo.
Yes.
And I was going to get you to show them where that's viewable and explain how they're updated.
Okay, definitely. So if you have it set to an aerial photo or a hybrid, it tells you the source date right here. In this case, it was 2017. Generally, these aerial photos are updated every 2 years or so. And it takes a while for the data to become available and to process. So usually the photos are taken during the summer and they're available approximately the following summer. So that's where it shows the date for the aerial photos, and the topo maps, if you switch to those, it shows you the source date there as well. So some of the topo maps are a little bit older, but the aerial photos tend to be within the last couple of years. Okay. We do get questions sometimes about getting an entire unit on the detailed topo maps. And let me just show you, once you're on this custom map building page, you can turn on the GMU. Let's turn on the deer and elk GMU boundaries here. And it's a little hard to see, but this red line here is the boundary, and it shows the unit numbers 502, 510, and so on. And let's just switch out to a topo map, and we'll switch to a 5x8 foot map, which is the largest that we offer. You will definitely not want to take this in the field, but I just want to show you to give you an idea how large this unit is. Even a 5x8 foot map would not fit it on there. And if we got the standard 2 foot by 3 foot maps, I'm going to turn on this quadrangle grid here. Shows these quads in yellow. This is how many of those quads it would take. So that's why in most cases it's not really practical to get a full unit on a series of maps. So that's why we recommend just getting an overview map for scouting and then get detailed prints once you know where you're going to be going.
Hey, Doug, this is one of my most common questions. People want to get the detailed maps of the whole unit. And so I want to make sure people understand these. The yellow highlighted words are the names of the USGS quads. So it typically covers, takes 10 to 12 quads to cover an entire hunting unit. So I generally recommend people to narrow down their focus, use the GMU map to scout and to sort of plan and to have conversations with folks that have hunted in that area before or are knowledgeable about it. And then you narrow it down to maybe a 20 or 30 mile radius, and then come in and get the more detailed maps to use to navigate on the field once they have their area narrowed down.
Yep, definitely. And on the overview maps, the full unit maps, in some cases you might just be hunting on a portion of the unit. So let's say you just want to hunt in the national forest. Well, you could narrow it down to this area. The national forest is shown in green. The BLM is orange here, and the blue is state. So yeah, these are great for setting that up. So let's say you look at the hybrid map, and for whatever reason, it's just not going to work for you, but you still want to have the aerial photo and the topo map. We recommend at that point just ordering a matched set of topo maps and aerial photos. So in this case, that's what I've done. Let me zoom out so you can see. So it's the same location. We've got the topo map and the aerial photo. So the aerial is going to show you what's on the ground, but the topo map is really necessary too, because you want to know what the elevations are like, what the landform is. So that is an option if the hybrid doesn't work for you. Now, in some cases, if you're especially in the eastern US or someplace outside the West where you have the hunting units, the GMUs, you might have the option for some type of state land or wildlife management area or something like that. So going back to the search page, going to the hunting area option, we have this section called the Eastern Public Lands. And so go to the state that you're interested in, and this will show you some of the federal lands and state lands. And once you click on any of these, it will take you to the location and show you a little overview of that. And you can see in this case, the state land is outlined and highlighted. And so this is just a way where you can just use that to get to the location that you want. In some cases, you'll probably have to set the map up. You can change the paper size and orientation to get the map, to get the location on there. But we don't necessarily have preset maps of these eastern hunting areas, but we do have many of them outlined on the maps, and you can see those when you're setting up the map. So in some cases, let's say this location, this is Cranks Creek Wildlife Management Area in Kentucky, and I went to the website, State of Kentucky, just to get information on this. And it's great to contact the state or whatever the agency is. And in some cases, they'll have maps like this. And it's good for showing things like parking, general areas, as far as trails, water sources, and so on. But you probably won't want to hunt with a map like this. But you can go onto our website and create a map that covers that same area. So here we have the Cranks Creek Wildlife Management Area, and it does have the outline, and it's shaded in as well. So when you're setting the map up and you have public land boundaries turned on like this, it does shade it in, so just be aware of that. In some cases, the shading may interfere with the topo lines or the aerial photo, and you may not want that. But yeah, just again, view the preview, take a look, see if you like it shaded or not shaded, because the way the preview comes through, that's the way your map is going to come out. But definitely contact your local sources for local information. But if you want the detailed map, come to us. So let's take a closer look now at one of the maps, the topographic map, and how you would read the map and tell what it actually says. We won't go into great detail about reading topo maps. There's a lot to cover there. But I just want to show you a few tips just for reading the map and getting to know where you want to go.
Hey,
Okay.
Doug, can I interrupt you before you start this section? Hey,
Yep.
I forgot to mention at the beginning, if everyone will stay on the call at the end, I have a special discount code I want to give everyone that'll give you 20% off an order, so don't let me forget to do that. And also, again, we encourage people to ask questions through the chat session, and we will try to get to those as we go along here. So thank you.
Yeah, definitely you want that discount. Okay, the first thing you want to look at as far as the landform goes, well, one of the first things I would want to look at while looking at a map is look at the side of the map here. And on our maps, it shows you the individual quadrangles that make up this map, and it shows the contour intervals. So in this case, most of the map has 40-foot contour intervals. Most maps are going to have 40-foot or 20-foot or 10-foot intervals. So just be aware of that, because if you have a map with 40-foot intervals and a map with 10-foot intervals, they may look like they have the same number of contour lines, but if you have 40 feet, you know you're dealing with some pretty serious terrain. And so just be aware of that. A lot of people will look at this map and wonder, how do I tell what all these lines mean? Well, of course, the contour lines show areas of elevation. Sometimes it's hard to tell, are we going uphill or downhill? You know that if you this feature right here is going to be a ridge, and you know that elevation is changing here, but how do you know which direction it's going, up or down? There's two good ways to tell this. First of all, if you look at the map and look at rivers or streams, and you see a feature that's going to be some type of a gorge or a canyon or a draw, it's going to have little V shapes. And these V shapes point in a certain direction. In this case, they point northeast. And the V's are always going to point uphill when you have a canyon or a draw like this. So in this case, uphill is upper right here. And you can see these V shapes are all over the place. V shape here. If you go over here at this canyon, you can see the V shapes here. They're pointing up. So upstream is to the north here. Let's see. Just be aware of places like this. These do have V shapes, but this is not a canyon or draw. This is a ridge. These V's are actually pointing downhill. So a lot of times you want to make sure there's a creek or river at the bottom of that. And that way you know that it's actually at the bottom of the feature. And in that case, the V's will point uphill. Another way to find your location is look at these big, the thicker contour lines. These are called index contours. Every fifth contour is an index contour. And if you follow it, it will tell you the elevation. So this line right here is 7,200 feet. This line here is 7,000 feet. So you know that going from here to here, if you're traveling northeast, you'll be going uphill. So that's another good way to find the landform and just if you're going uphill or downhill. If you find a place where it has a circle or especially a series of concentric circles like this, you know that is a hilltop or some type of high point. And usually at the top of the high point, it will show you the elevation. Areas that are flatter have very few contour lines. Areas that are steeper have lots of contour lines like this. So that's just a very brief overview of how to read the contours. Something else
hey, Doug, you got a quick question about metric versus feet on maps that you might want to address.
Okay. Yeah, the question is sometimes there's meters and feet on the same maps. That doesn't occur very often, but sometimes it does. There's just some locations in the US where they did contour maps in meters, and that's just the way it is. We don't have a way to switch it on our website or in our system because that's just the way the USGS produced it. So the question is there any way to get it like all in imperial? Not really. You can try, well, I know in some cases the GMU maps are in meters, and in that case you might just switch to our detailed maps, custom maps, and they might be in feet. But if it shows up on the screen or on the preview or on the final map in feet or meters, that's just the way it is. We don't have a way to switch that. And definitely we feel your pain. It is very confusing. It's kind of frustrating for us that there's no standard in some locations. Fortunately, the vast majority of the US is in feet, but there are a few locations that are in meters.
She also is wanting a calculation tip, if there's.
Okay, calculating.
Feet to meters.
Oh. I don't have the calculation right off. I mean, it's roughly 3, but I think most of the maps, well, trying to think, it doesn't show it on our maps. I know some, if you order like one of the USGS, are they on the US topo maps? I forget right off. Maybe it's on the, seems like some of our maps have a feet to meters conversion. Yeah, this actually has it. I guess it's not very precise here, but it shows approximately feet and meters. Yeah, I don't recall the conversion factor right off, but it's roughly 3. It doesn't get you extremely close.
The one tip I would say is, don't wait till you're in the field to figure these things out. Study your maps beforehand. Make sure you understand what you're dealing with before you get out in the field, and so you can not be caught unawares.
Okay, next thing I want to take a look at is distance. And in some parts of the US, your maps will have these handy red squares with red numbers in the center. And these are section lines. And in most cases, they should be right around 1 mile. So this is just a handy way to glance at the map and say, okay, this is 1 mile, and give you an idea. You want to get a lot more precise, which in most cases you want to. Come over here to the scale on the map. And standard map scale is 1 to 24,000, but you can choose different options. And so it shows 1:10,000. A lot of times you might be wondering how to convert that to, convert what you measure on the map, usually in inches, to what's on the ground. And to do that, you want to take a look at your scale here. And just remember that anything you measure on the map, let's say you measure 1 inch, that's going to be 1 inch on the map is 10,000 inches on the ground. So don't think that that's going to be 1 inch is 10,000 feet or whatever. So then you can pretty easily then just divide it out to find the number of, divide by 12 to get the number of feet. So 1 inch, if you measure 1 inch on the map, it's 833 feet. Or divide that by 36 to get the number of yards. So 1 inch on the map is 277 yards. Our standard map scale at 1 to 24,000 for the topo map, that's going to give you 1 inch equals 2,000 feet. So whatever your conversion factor is, just make sure you know that, and that way you can measure on the map with a ruler and tell exactly how far it's going to be from any location to another. Let's see. We have a question about using the UTM grid quadrants. And it says the map does not show the change of zone from 16 to 17. I would have to take a specific look at it, but in most cases, if there is a zone boundary on the map, it will have a dashed red line right through the map. And the tricky thing about UTM zones, this gets pretty technical, but once you get to the zone boundary, there's no way to show coordinates for both zones on the same map. You can't have two projections side by side. The maps would not line up. And so the map is going to be either based in zone 16 or based in zone 17. And all the coordinates then would be based in whatever zone it is. So it's kind of tricky. There's a pretty easy way around that. We can print a map that covers the same area, but is in the adjacent zone, and it would then have the coordinates for that zone. So that gets a little technical. Carl, if you have further questions, we can help you out on that later.
We can take that offline. Just for everyone else, he's just referring to when a line crosses a UTM zone, which is not that common for that to happen. Okay, let's move on.
Okay. All right, and just a couple other parts of the map. Of course, these blue lines or circles, if you have a lake or some type of lake or other water feature, that's going to be represented on the map. This is in Montana, so we don't have a whole lot of natural lakes here in this part of the state. But the water features are shown, and roads and trails are shown as well. You'll probably be using roads or trails to access your location. In this case, it shows a double dashed line, which is usually a four-wheel drive type trail. And a dashed single line is going to be more like a hiking trail. And this map probably doesn't have it, but more well-maintained roads are going to be double solid lines. And the handy thing about these maps is it shows your Forest Service road numbers. So this 2091, that's your Forest Service road number. And I think some of these might have, yeah, I think that's all. But if you are setting up your map, I just want to point out another option. It doesn't show it here, but let's go back here.
That's because that's an eastern land map, so it probably doesn't have as many.
Yeah.
It's a western map.
Yep. If you're in a location that has public lands, usually national forest, you'll have a public land roads option. You just put a check in that box, and that will then show you. It's hard to see on this overview, but it shows you the Forest Service roads with the numbers in a lot greater detail.
I think if you turn off the USGS quads, that would show up better. The roads are yellow highlighted.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And in some cases, the topo maps from the USGS might be a little bit old, so it's handy to turn that on. That data set is a little more up to date. All right, so that's just basics of reading the topo map. Let's talk about some more specifics about things you might be wanting to look for. Let me take a quick look and see if we have questions. So, question from Paul is if he needs to call for help with a specific map he's creating, what's the best number to call? And Paige put that in the chat. That's 877-587-9004. You can give us a call if you're having trouble setting up a map or just have any specific questions on that. Okay, so now that we roughly know how to read contour lines, let's just take a closer look at some of the features you might be looking for. So I already mentioned things like draws and canyons would be indicated by these little V shapes here. And you can tell if it's very steep like this or not as steep like this one here just by the number of contour lines around there. But this is going to be a handy thing to help find things like funnels and pinch points and places where the game has to go through, or it's going to be a good place to find trails or routes where the game is going to be going through. So it's important to be able to identify those and also just identify places that will be inaccessible or very difficult to access just because of the steepness of it. So when you're looking for and trying to find out where you want to hunt and where you want to find the game, you're probably going to be looking for things like food, water, and cover. And so things like water sources. One thing I want to mention is that on the Arizona maps, if you get the Arizona GMU maps, it does come up with a layer on there that has the water sources. And so I know, especially in Arizona, that's a pretty important thing to know, and those are shown on the map. I had mentioned earlier looking at the aerial photo to show what's on the ground. Let me just do a quick comparison here between the topo map and the aerial photo. So on the topo map, you're going to have green areas like this and white areas. Green areas generally show places that are forested or have some type of trees, but it's a little difficult to tell on the topo map what exactly that means. Say, well, probably there's some trees here and maybe some here, but unless you switch to the topo map, it's hard to tell. I think we're at roughly the same location here. It's hard to tell what exactly that means, but on the aerial photo, if you zoom in on it, you can even pick out individual trees and find areas where it has good cover, not so good cover. You can see where the trees are very thick or where they're sparse like this. So the aerial photo gives you a whole lot more detail on that. And this is going to help you to understand a little bit better, where the animals are going to be traveling and what routes they're going to be taking between cover. Okay, let's switch back to the topo map. You might also be looking for things like saddles, which would be places where, usually on a ridge, where you might find animals traveling and trying to find the path of least resistance between two locations. So let's say animals traveling between this drainage and this one over here. It's a little bit steep right here. Here's just kind of a ridge, but here you have a high point, and up here is kind of another high point. And this is just a little bit of a saddle right here. So it's a place where we have high terrain here, and a little bit lower right here. Here's another one right here, high point here, higher terrain up here, and there's just a little bit of a dip right here. So it's important to know how to identify those. You might also be looking for things like benches. See if I can find something like that. Okay, here's a good example. So we have very steep terrain right here. Not as steep, but still a pretty good slope right here, and steep all the way over here. But right here, we just have an area where it's fairly flat, an area where there's not quite a lot of contour lines, not quite a lot of elevation change. And compared to the slopes that go all the way down here and continuous slope here, you just have a little bench right here. A good thing to identify. Let's see. This might be a good point to have Jay jump in and just mention some of the features that he looks for on topo maps, if you're willing to do that, Jay.
Sure, Doug. I'm glad that you touched on the saddles and the benches. Those can be, can you hear me okay?
Yep, sounds great.
Okay. Yep. Saddles in particular are it's important to note those when you're doing your map study, because when elk get pressured in any particular area, Doug mentioned that that saddles are kind of like the path of least resistance, and I tend to agree with that. And it's hard. I mean, even in states as sparsely populated as Montana or Wyoming, there's still a fair amount of hunting pressure in any given area, and it's just getting worse. I mean, as more and more people start elk hunting. So that's one thing I would identify in the area I'm hunting, is where those saddles are, and those can be escape routes. So if elk are on one side of a ridge and they're getting pressured on that, let's say they're on the south side of a ridge and they need to get away from that pressure, more than likely, more often than not, maybe I should say that, more often than not, they're going to use those saddles to move from one point to the other. Now here's something that I kind of tip hunters on. If saddles can be covered, meaning there's timber in the saddle, or it can be open. If elk have a choice, they will move through the timber rather than move out in the open where they're exposed. But if they have to go through a saddle or a notch that is open, something I've noticed in like 30 years of elk hunting is before they will bail off the back side of that saddle, they'll stop or they'll slow down. And what they're doing is they're trying to look at the terrain that they're getting ready to enter to see if there's any threats and also if there's any cover. And a smart hunter that's watching that saddle, if you anticipate that, the fact that they're going to stop or they're going to pause or slow down, that can work to your advantage. But as they crest that saddle on the back side, if there's cover on the back side, they're going to head for that cover just as fast as they can. They're not going to come running down in the open unless it's some extreme circumstance. On benches, real quickly, those are great places to find individual bulls, especially later on in the hunting season after the rut is over and these bull elk are exhausted, they're tired, they're worn out. They just want to go and be left alone. And oftentimes what they'll do is they'll settle on one of those benches and they may stay there for a few days. So if you can identify those types of terrain in the area that you're hunting in, that's to your advantage.
Okay, very good. Yeah.
Doug, you've got a couple of map questions
Yes.
about it, orienting,
Yep.
the map orientation. That might be quick to answer.
Okay, first question is, does the map orient to magnetic north? No, all of our maps orient to grid north, which is a little bit different than true north. And if you zoom in or look on your map on the right side or the bottom of the map sometimes, this shows a north arrow, and it shows you all three of them right here. So grid north is shown as straight up, so the edge of the map is grid north. Just because of the way these maps are projected, grid north is a little bit different than true north. And in this case, it shows true north being 2 degrees off to the west of grid north. And usually, not 100% of the time, but usually the section lines are going to be oriented to true north. So you can kind of see the difference here between where the section lines are going and the edge of the map. So that's the difference right there. And UTM lines, those will be oriented to true north. Finally, magnetic north, in this case, is 8 degrees east of grid north. And so if you're orienting your compass to the edge of the map or to the UTM lines, you want to use that 8-degree figure. Now, sometimes people will look online and say, your map shows 8 degrees off from from true north, or magnetic north being 8 degrees off, but I look online and it shows 10 degrees. And the reason is that when you're looking online, it's going to show you the difference between true north and magnetic north, whereas our maps show you the difference between grid north and magnetic north. And so if you add these up, 8 and 2, that adds up to 10. That's what the online tool is going to show you. But it really just depends on what you're orienting your compass to. If you orient your compass to true north here, then you can use the 10-degree figure. But if you are orienting your compass to the edge of the map, or you put the UTM grid lines on there, you'll want to use the 8-degree figure. But our maps, we don't have the option to orient to magnetic north, so you'll have to just orient to grid north and use that. Okay, next question, what are prospects? I think this map had prospects, yeah. So this is an area where mining has occurred, excuse me. And I don't know exactly what that represents on the ground. In a lot of cases, the topo maps are quite a bit older, and so you might not find anything there. I don't know, Paige, have you talked to people who have who've worked with this at all?
Yeah, I mean, I think the USGS symbol guide may have more on that, but it probably indicates some kind of former mining site. There may or may not be any evidence of it now, but good to know. One complaint I've heard about the new US topos is they don't have a lot of that symbology, and you know, I think hunters like to know everything they can about what's happening on the ground, and so I think those symbols are important to know. They may or may not help you, or may not be relevant to, you know, a safety issue or safety hazard or anything now, but good to know what's gone on the land before. And those classic USGS quads, which is the database we make our custom maps out of, have all that symbology. So good to study that symbology and sort of know, use the USGS symbol guide to interpret it. If you ever have any questions, feel free to call us, and we always love learning, you know, seeing symbols and learning new things about what they might mean as well. But yeah, I think prospects probably has something to do with the mining, some kind of mining. Also, given that it's here in Montana.
Yeah. Okay. Let's take a look at a few of the safety aspects of using topo maps, and especially with hunting. And I was talking with Paige yesterday and thinking about the fact that if somebody's out hiking or otherwise exploring, usually they might have their map out and say, okay, we're going to go here. And they're kind of tracking themselves along the way. Whereas if you're hunting, it might be a little bit easier to get distracted by what you're actually doing and pay less attention to the navigation and where you're at. So one helpful tip is just to mark your map and mark where you're at. I think every 30 minutes is a good recommendation. And our maps are waterproof by default. All of our GMU maps are waterproof, and the rest of them, it's you have the option for laminated, but waterproof is the default option, and it's what we recommend. So you can write on these maps, and it will not affect the waterproofness of them. I would say the only thing you just be aware of is don't use a super sharp pencil. Maybe use kind of a soft pencil, or you can use a permanent marker, pretty much anything like that. Some people ask about using a dry erase marker on our maps. They don't have the shiny surfaces where you can wipe it off. So any type of marker you use on our maps will probably be permanent. But the map is waterproof. We have a video out there of somebody coming out of the water, swimming, coming out of the water, and pulling a MyTopo map out of their pocket and reading it. So don't be afraid to use our maps and get them wet.
Doug, the one thing I'd say about lamination, a lot of the hunters in the South have hunting clubs, and they've got you know, big parcel of land, and they send out lots of people to deer stands, and they want to use they like to use those laminated maps to show where the different deer stands are, and they erase them and show people, you know, move them as they move them around. So that's a good thing to, you know, have a big laminated map if you've got a hunting club and need to know where the deer stands are and who's using them, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Yep. So that is helpful. And once you're setting the map up, I'll show you the options here. So you have the option for waterproof. You can select folded or rolled, or you can do the laminated map. So So laminated is great for indoors, or if you want to, write things and erase them. But for outdoor use, we recommend the waterproof. Okay. Yeah, so don't be afraid to write on your maps and just keep track of where you're at. Mark it on the map. I mentioned earlier finding distance on the map, and this is a really important consideration, especially if you're out there and trying to find the wildlife and thinking about things like, where you're going to be hunting and transporting. So let's say you're on this ridge right here, and you're glassing and looking out for elk. And let's say you see an elk on this ridge right here. Well, you can pull out your ruler if you want and measure that out, or you can just roughly estimate. We said before these squares are 1 mile squares, so you're probably looking about a mile across there. And it's important to think about the terrain that's between here and there. You can use the topo map for that. It's important to think about what the regulations are, where you're going, as far as will you be able to take any kind of vehicle close to there. And so you really need to be thinking about when you're out there hunting, how long it's going to take you to get there, what the transportation logistics look like, as far as, even if you make the kill, how are you going to bring it back? Can you get it out before dark? So we encourage you to be smart and use topo maps in your decision making. Use that to help you make wise decisions. You can have the tool there, but if you don't use it and you're not smart about it, then it doesn't do you much good. So we want to help provide you with the best tools possible, but you're the only one that can actually use it. And finally, we recommend just getting in touch, learning the local regulations, and getting in touch with whoever the agency is that's in charge there. We can provide you with a great map of any location in the US, but we can't provide you with the local knowledge. That's something that you can only get from somebody who knows it a lot better than we do. You can also, a different type of map that you can get from us is a ownership map. And when you're setting up the map, let me switch back here and just show you. You can turn on the option for private property lines. And this will actually delineate, once you get the preview and get the map, it would look like this, but this actually shows you all the property lines and who owns each of the parcels. So this is just handy for knowing where the private property is at and who owns it. In some cases, you can use that to make contacts, or if you have a situation where you need to access that for whatever reason, then you can find out who owns the property. And when you're setting the map up, we also have the option for the public land boundaries. So especially in Western states, this is going to show you the federal land and state land. So in conjunction with the private property lines, this just comes in really handy because it shows you where the public land is going to be at. And then it also shows you the owners in the land adjacent to the public land. So we encourage you to use all your resources to safely use the topo map and to safely hunt. So let me take a look and see if we have further questions. That's, let's see here.
Doug, I think the question is setting up your GPS to match with your printed map. I think it's a great question, and you can probably tell them a little bit about how important it is to make sure you're comparing apples to apples and have all your settings matching. And then I'd love if Jay has some comments about how important it is to know the rules of where you are. Maybe he can follow on and give some insights into how he makes sure he's always hunting legal.
Yeah. Yep, that's a very good question. We actually was that our previous webinar when we did navigation? That goes into a little more detail about some of these things. But when you're setting your map up on the step 4, this is where you put in your title and some other options. It shows you navigation grid options. So latitude, longitude grids, you can choose no grid, tick marks, which puts the numbers on the edge, or full grid lines, and UTM. Same thing, you can do the tick marks or the full grid lines. And so this map, I just selected tick marks for latitude and longitude. And if we look closely, this is what these coordinates look like. So if you have latitude, longitude on our maps, the coordinate format is called degree, minute, and second. So even if you have latitude and longitude, there are different coordinate formats. You can have degree, minute, second, you can have decimal degrees, or degrees and minutes. And so just make sure your GPS is set up, in this case, for degree, minute, and second, latitude, longitude. And a lot of times this will be indicated by something like DD, MM, SS for degrees, minutes, and seconds. If you have something in decimal degrees, instead of being 108 degrees and 30 minutes, it would be more like 108.5. So just different formats. You can convert between those, but it requires some math. So it's usually best to set your GPS up that way. Now, if you turn on UTM coordinates, or if you have one of our GMU maps, you'll have these blue numbers along the edge here. And the blue numbers are the UTM easting and northing. And just make sure your map is set up for or your GPS is set up for UTM, and then you'll be able to have the same coordinates here. And it also shows you the UTM's grid with the zone number. Let's see, in this case, zone 12. Make sure your UTM is on that same zone.
Also the datum, they need
yes.
to make sure their datum matches.
Yes. Most GPSs, modern GPSs, are set to the datum that our maps are set to, which is either WGS84 or NAD83. Those are pretty much equivalent. In some cases, you may set your map up for NAD27. In that case, just make sure your GPS is set up for the same datum. But in general, if you leave your GPS on the default and leave our maps on the default, they should line up.
Doug,
right.
one thing I'll add is a lot of our customers are great patriots, served in our military to protect our country, and they are used to using the 1 to 50,000 scale grid or scale. And since our maps are our custom maps are 1 to 24,000 native scale, the 1 to 50,000 gets super, the print gets super small, super hard to read. So one consideration is you can order the 1 to 50, but one consideration is to consider ordering the 1 to 25 and just divide it by 2, because the map will be easier to read. But just a word of caution that 1 to 50,000 scale maps, our maps are based on the 1 to 24,000. So even though we allow you to zoom out to 1 to 50, those do get really hard to read.
Yep, definitely. Yeah, for detailed topo reading, I really don't recommend going beyond 1 to 30,000. It just gets so hard to read. But yeah, 1 to 25,000 is a good option, and you can have that military grid on there as well. So yep, that's a good choice. So
Jay, you want to add anything here about safety? Any tips you've learned from your years in the field?
Sure. Especially if you're hunting in territory that you're not familiar with, maybe a new area. I think it's critically important that you maintain or you keep all of your essential navigation equipment on your person. I mean, put it in your cargo, put the maps in your cargo pockets, put your GPS in there, all right, as opposed to if you're hunting on horseback, putting it in some saddlebags or putting it in a day pack that you hang on the pommel of the horse or whatever. And the reason I say that is very personal to me. Sometimes you get involuntarily separated from your horse, and whatever's on the horse goes in one direction and you go in another direction. Now you find yourself on the ground, and everything that was important, especially on how to get back to civilization or get back to camp, is gone. I found myself in that case, in a situation like that, broken up pretty bad. And it was kind of a scary time, but the lesson learned was going forward, have the essentials that you need, have it on your body, so that if that were to happen, that you're kind of prepared. Doug talked about on another topic, talked about making sure that your GPS conforms to whatever latitude and longitude format that you've had your map printed in. I can't tell you how many times that we use these maps. We actually provide them to hunters for certain areas, kind of like some homework. We do it. We sell it to them with information printed on the map. And I've had hunters call me from the field on their cell phones because they're having problems because we have the maps printed in degrees, minutes, and seconds. I'm sorry, degrees, minutes, and seconds, and they have not set their GPS up to align with that, and they can't get it to sync. So that's really important. However you order your maps, make sure that you've gone into your GPS and you've set that in the same format. That's just huge. And also too, if GPS is new to you, get intimately familiar with that thing long before you go out in the field and have to depend on it. Midnight with a flashlight stuck between your teeth is not a time to be pulling out the instruction book to your GPS to figure out how to get back to camp. Get familiar with it. That's the most I can tell you about that. These are great tools, by the way. And when we order these, we order a topo map and an aerial photo specifically because folks that haven't spent a lot of time using aerial or using topo maps, when they first look at it, it's hard to interpret. But when you put that same scale of an aerial photo right beside it, and you kind of find this particular point on the topo map, you can find that same corresponding point on the aerial photo, and that aerial photo kind of gives your brain that information in a format. It's visual. It helps you understand what all those contour lines mean. So anytime you're going to get a map, I really encourage you to get the aerial photo to go with it. And in the old days, the aerial photo really wasn't updated as often, but now sometimes those aerial photos are even more current than the information that you'll find on the topo. So you can, if there's been logging in an area, the topographical map may not show that, but the aerial photo will show, okay, that side of that hillside's been logged off. It was logged off last year. So that's really important. So I would encourage you to get both of them.
Jay, along those lines, I've had a couple of customers that have run into situations where there's been forest fires. And so the aerial might show where an area has had a burn within the last 5 or so years. And that can be good to know because I guess the game like the new tinder sprouts coming up from the burned areas.
Absolutely, Paige. If you have a burn in an area, as soon as a year later, that's like a smorgasbord for elk, because just like you said, the overstory has been burned off. Now the understory is growing back up, and all that fresh green stuff is coming up out of the earth. And in the first 3 years after a fire, after a good burn, can make that area just awesome elk hunting. And the same goes for logging, actually. If a logging company comes in and they clean off the hillside, now they've opened up the ground to new growth. Same rule of thumb, 1 to 3 years after that can be phenomenal for elk hunting.
A couple of great tips that participants are offering. Tom A. tells us to make sure you know which direction is the best way to hike out. That's Doug, you want to talk a little bit to that?
Yeah, that's a really good tip. Let's say you know you're going to be hunting in these ridges or canyons or whatever here, and your camp location or parking area or civilization or whatever is down here. Worst case scenario, you know that you want to head southwest. If you're deep in the woods here and something happens, whatever happens, you can either go downstream here or go southwest. Or let's say your parking area was up top here on the ridge. In this case, you want to head northeast. But yeah, knowing the general area, kind of big picture, that's important too. Sometimes it's good to know exactly where you're at, but it's good to, just in case of the worst happening, just know what direction you need to head to.
Yeah, and we're big proponents of using all the tools available to you. We don't like the debates where people are saying, "Why do I need a paper map? I've got a GPS. Why do I need a GPS? I've got a paper map." We say use everything that you can. Use them all together. Make sure you just don't want to ever be in a situation where your GPS stops working and you don't have a paper map as a backup. Certainly, a GPS having that little blue dot, be able to confirm where you are at any given point is a great safety backup to your map. It helps. We say use them in conjunction and use everything you can to stay safe out there. Mark M has a great tool or help, and I think Jay touched on it as well. Keep the things you need for survival, your map, your fire, your food, your water on a chest pack. That's a great idea. Definitely we've heard of everything from GPSs, falling out of your chest pocket into a creek to all sorts of things. Then we've got a couple of questions here. Paul and Fred seem to asking a few map questions. Maybe you can address. We're at 10:58, so let's have Doug answer those questions, and then we'll come back to wrap up.
Okay. Yeah. So we had a question about the map symbols, and the USGS has a symbol guide. Just search for topographic map symbols, and you can download it. And you can see it's about 3 pages long. So that's why it's not really practical to put that on the edge of the map. We don't have that option. But if you want more details from the symbols, just search for that USGS topographic map symbols, and that will come up. Let's see. And what are the red numbered boxes used for north of the Red Prior Mountain? That's a good question. Let me bring that up and see.
We have a whole webinar on navigating, and that may be good for people. I'll try to put that in the chat session here in a second. There's a link to that YouTube video on how to navigate, but you can probably just go to YouTube and Google MyTopo navigations webinar, and you'll find it.
Yeah, but this is Forest Service road numbers, so 2091. If you're traveling along and you see a junction in the national forest, a lot of times you'll see the road number on there. So that's really handy for keeping yourself found just when you're driving or otherwise getting out there.
Okay, we have hit 11 o'clock. Thank you, Doug. You did a great job. Thank you so much to Jay for your knowledge and expertise. Google Jay Houston. He's got 7 books out on hunting that would be fantastic for you to all have in your library. And to thank you for participating, I set up a code. If you mark when you're making a map on MyTopo, if you mark that you have a promotional code or coupon, it'll give you a space to type something in, and I'm going to type it in the chat now. If you type in webinar 930, our system will calculate a 20% discount for the next month. So we hope you'll take advantage of that. We appreciate you participating today, and we will send this out. We'll post this to YouTube. We have a YouTube channel. Our YouTube channel is under our mapping software product, which is called Terrain Navigator. So if you go to YouTube and type in Terrain Navigator, that's the name of our professional mapping software that a lot of the search and rescue folks and all use. If you type in Terrain Navigator on YouTube, you'll come up with the YouTube channel, and this webinar will be posted there. We'll also send it out in a link to you, and we thank you, and this concludes our webinar.